The father opened his daughter's laptop, but strange sounds emanated from the speakers. Horrified, he called his wife. Both were paralyzed with fear as they watched the video depicting their daughter being brutally tortured. What plunged them into even deeper despair was that 3 days later, her body was found in the woods. She had not only been burned all over her body, but the nails on her fingers and toes had also been ripped out. The bruising indicated that the torture had lasted for at least several days. This case reminded the police of 3 gruesome murders that occurred in Seoul, South Korea, 15 years prior. The perpetrator had tortured and murdered 3 young women, then left their bodies in front of their homes, as if deliberately displaying them to their parents, ensuring they were the first to witness the horrific scene. However, this case was different. The perpetrator sent a video instead of a body. The investigative team theorized that the perpetrator derived pleasure from forcing the parents to watch the torture of their child, inflicting far greater pain than simply seeing the body. This pointed to an intense hatred of familial bonds. However, the police had no suspects. Detective Lee Han noticed something unusual about the video. The masked man in the video didn't seem to be acting solely for himself, but was acutely aware of being watched. Furthermore, he noticed that the camera was shaking, indicating it wasn't fixed in place. Throughout the assault, the man repeatedly glanced towards the lens, as if mindful of another perpetrator. Sure enough, DNA testing revealed that the perpetrator's DNA recovered from the victim's body didn't match the DNA from the previous cases. This meant there were 2 perpetrators, one carrying out the torture and the other filming it. The mastermind had a more controlling personality, letting the weaker accomplice commit the initial crime to hold incriminating evidence against them. This gradually addicted the controlled accomplice to the act of harming others. Meanwhile, Hyun-jun went to the girls' school to retrieve surveillance footage from before her disappearance. He discovered that after leaving her classroom, the girl had picked up a notebook and chased after someone, eventually disappearing at the end of the hallway. After experimenting, Hyun-jun deduced that one perpetrator strategically used blind spots in the camera coverage to lure the victim, while the other lay in wait behind a door. They worked together to abduct the girl, exploiting her kindness and willingness to help others. However, the speed of the police investigation couldn't keep up with the perpetrator's actions. One perpetrator feigned a disability and intentionally fell in front of the girl. She instinctively went to help him, but he suddenly attacked her from behind with a stun gun. His accomplice, waiting nearby in a car, quickly whisked her away. The horrors that awaited her were unimaginable. The investigative team quickly conducted a criminal psychological profile to narrow down the suspects. The victims initially followed the perpetrator willingly, suggesting that the perpetrator had a non-threatening appearance and was likely between 20 and 30 years old. Based on the timing of the crime and the body disposal, it appeared the perpetrator had no fixed occupation or was possibly self-employed. Judging by the nature of the torture, it was highly likely that he had been abused as a child or had experienced domestic violence. However, based on this alone, it was difficult to pinpoint a specific suspect. But the sharp-eyed Hyun-jun noticed a tattoo on the perpetrator's wrist in the video. The tech team immediately enhanced the video for a clearer image. Seeing the familiar star tattoo, Detective Lee Han jumped up. It turned out the tattoo read Culture. Culture was the name of a clandestine live streaming website specializing in producing fake SM videos. The operator of Culture, Yi Deok, had been imprisoned multiple times for violent offenses. According to his records, he suffered from domestic abuse as a child. This aligned almost perfectly with the police's psychological profile. Currently, Yi Deok had registered a new company. As soon as the police arrived at the location, they heard agonizing screams. The criminal looked directly into the camera as he beat a young woman, ignoring her pleas. He showed no intention of stopping. The enraged female officer subdued him and listened to his confession. The place appeared to be a legitimate trading company, but in reality, it was a secret location for filming pornographic videos. What they had just witnessed was staged. Upon questioning, the police learned that he and Yi Deok had worked together at Culture. Therefore, both had the same tattoo on their wrists. Meanwhile, Mr. Kang and Hyun-jun stormed Yi Deok's house, but his father blocked the entrance. Hearing the commotion, Yi Deok fled. Hyun-jun immediately pursued him to the rooftop. Terrified of returning to prison, Yi-deok jumped from the rooftop, dying instantly. But Mr. Kang found a piece of the victim's fingernail in Yi-deok's bedroom, confirming his involvement in the crime. However, the messy state of his room completely contradicted the controlled nature of the mastermind. The room had no mirrors, a typical characteristic of self-denial. Therefore, Yi-deok must have been the controlled accomplice. Sure enough, Mr. Kang found a group photo in Yi-deok's room. According to the criminal's confession, besides Yi-deok, there was another person named Young-sub who also had the tattoo on his wrist. This person also worked at Eskshare. When they knocked on Young-sub's door, his wife nervously buttoned her shirt as if trying to conceal something. Upon entering, they noticed the meticulously clean and organized room. His wife claimed she hadn't been able to contact her husband for a long time. Upon hearing of Yi-deok's death, Young-sub's wife, Yoo Kyung, seemed startled and quickly stated that her husband only knew him casually. Hyun-jun noticed a collection of liquor bottles in the corner and asked, "Your husband seems to enjoy drinking." Yoo Kyung replied, "No, that's me." Sensing Yoo Kyung's evasiveness, they left their business cards and purposely departed. But Mr. Kang had already noticed the excessive tidiness of the room and the mirrors placed everywhere, as if to control every corner of the house. This was a typical characteristic of an abuser. He also noticed signs of abuse on Yoo Kyung. They decided to stake out the house. Anxious, Yoo Kyung tried calling her husband but couldn't reach him. She also astutely realized the police were nearby. Suddenly, there was a noise from upstairs, but by the time the police reacted, it was too late. Yoo Kyung had jumped out the window and escaped. They worried that if Young-sub knew he was being watched by the police, he would definitely take drastic measures. But while the police were searching for Yoo Kyung, she unexpectedly arrived at the police station, covered in injuries. Yoo Kyung admitted to telling her husband about the police investigation. To her horror, he didn't say anything but simply beat her. Interrogated by Mr. Kang, Yoo Kyung finally confessed the truth. "Actually, I don't drink." He's usually very caring and kind. But as soon as he drinks, he becomes abusive. Noticing the ring on her finger, the female officer remarked, "That belongs to the victim." Panicked, Yoo Kyung quickly removed the ring and threw it on the floor. After regaining consciousness, she revealed her husband's location. The police swiftly apprehended him and found the murder weapon in his car. When he saw the wall covered with photos of the victims, he feigned fear and disgust. Despite the overwhelming evidence, he maintained a calm facade and refused to confess. Hoping to quickly locate the hostage, the police persuaded Yoo Kyung to talk to her husband. She looked into her husband's eyes, then at the victim's photos on the wall, and urged him to reveal the missing girl's location. But he vehemently denied any involvement. "I didn't harm anyone. I'll never tell you." Hearing this, Yoo Kyung gave up. She couldn't believe her husband was a murderer, and she couldn't bear to think about how she would live alone. Seeing her apparent fragility, everyone felt sympathy, but Mr. Kang became suspicious. He noticed that while the husband's car was messy, their house was excessively tidy. Neither he nor Yi-deok had been abused by their mothers, which didn't fit the police's profile. They reviewed the interrogation video and observed that the husband consistently maintained a calm demeanor, exhibiting defensive body language. When he looked at the victim's photos, his fear and disgust seemed feigned. Yoo Kyung, on the other hand, was entirely different. She showed no fear and even proactively looked into her husband's eyes. Her calmness was unsettling. Young-sub seemed to constantly observe Yoo Kyung, as if waiting for her instructions. At this point, Mr. Kang realized that Yoo Kyung was feigning weakness to manipulate her husband into taking the blame. Finally, the audio from the interrogation confirmed his suspicion. One phrase from the husband gave him away. "That bitch, that kind deserves to die." It turned out Yoo Kyung had played the victim, manipulating Yi-deok and Young-sub into carrying out her plans. When the police called the team escorting Yoo Kyung, they received the news that she had stunned her escort, stolen the car keys, and escaped. Yoo Kyung decided to deal with the hostage, but strangely, despite knowing the police were watching her, she still took the risk. Mr. Kang deduced that Yu Kyung was confident in her ability to control her husband. She didn't want the police to find Young Sub first, so she made a preemptive strike. After further investigation, the police discovered the root of Yu Kyung's motives lay in her past. They found medical records revealing that when she was 15, the hospital discovered she had been sexually assaulted and helped her report it to the police. At that time, the police investigated her stepfather as a suspect. However, the investigative team couldn't understand why, despite being assaulted by her stepfather, Yu Kyung targeted the victims' mothers. It turned out Yu Kyung's mother had forced her to conceal the truth and recant her testimony. This allowed her stepfather to escape suspicion. From then on, Yu Kyung's life became a living hell. Even the mother she trusted most had failed to protect her. As a result, she developed an intense hatred of this familial bond. Her psyche became distorted, and she began committing these crimes to inflict pain on the victims and their mothers. Mr. Kang realized they couldn't wait any longer and had to obtain a confession from Young Sub immediately. He lied, claiming he'd found evidence of Yu Kyung's guilt, aiming to shatter Young Sub's trust in her. The first two victims had Yi Deok's DNA, but by the third, Yi Deok was scared and refused to participate. That's when Yu Kyung deliberately approached Young Sub. Yi Deok committed suicide to avoid prison. A coward like him couldn't possibly have collected the victims' fingernails as trophies. There was only one possibility: Yu Kyung had framed him. From the beginning, she manipulated both men to take the fall for her. Seeing Young Sub unraveling, the investigators delivered the final blow. They played a video found in his house, documenting his torture of a victim. This was the evidence Yu Kyung had planted to frame him, ensuring her own escape. To Yu Kyung, men were disposable. You're just another tool to be discarded, like Yi Deok. Realizing the truth, Young Sub revealed the location of the latest victim. But by the time they arrived, Yu Kyung had already moved her. Fortunately, after a struggle, they stopped her just as she was about to stab the girl. A female officer tackled her and subdued her. The torture case was closed. However, the team immediately faced a new one: the Southwest's serial killer. A witness was severely traumatized after discovering a blood-soaked female body. This is Korea, a small country overflowing with deviance. In the past few months, 4 similar murders had occurred. The victims were all attractive young women. The killer stalked his prey through a used goods trading website, luring them with bargain prices. When the women arrived for the in-person exchange, he'd concoct various excuses to get them into his car, knock them unconscious, and transport them to secluded locations. There, he'd imprison them in dark, terrifying cages. He was meticulous, leaving no trace. Not only did he clip the victim's fingernails, but he also used alcohol to destroy any remaining evidence. Consequently, the police had nothing on him. Reviewing the 4 cases, the police noticed the victims all disappeared on holidays. Their survival times after disappearance were 3 days, 6 days, and 5 days, respectively. They deduced the 4th victim had only 4 days left, giving the police less than a day to rescue her. However, Captain Kang believed the 4th victim was already dead. He reviewed the missing persons reports and discovered one the police hadn't investigated. At the time, the girl's death was attributed to a fall caused by heavy rain. But in reality, she was the 5th victim, and her survival time was only 3 days. Her decomposing body was found in a dumpster. The modus operandi matched the previous cases. The killer not only disposed of the fingernails, but also covered the victim's eyes with tape to avoid identification. The bodies showed signs of sexual assault, but the perpetrator hadn't had intercourse with them. The only difference this time was a sign of hesitation from the killer. Captain Kang believed he was intentionally misleading the police. The police quickly conducted a criminal profile. Since the killer could delete records from the trading website, they deduced he was a tech-savvy young man. His ability to lure women into his car without raising suspicion suggested a pleasant but unremarkable appearance. The marks on the victims' bodies indicated he relished the process, possibly even addicted to the act. He likely suffered psychological trauma in his childhood, leading to obsessive-compulsive tendencies. Killing became his way of asserting power. Before their deaths, the victims were assaulted, but there was no evidence of intercourse. This suggested a physical defect. Captain Kang speculated that he might have started offending in his youth. The time between the killer's attacks was shortening. They had to catch him quickly. As predicted, the killer had his eye on a new target, Na Young, Officer Hyun-jun's younger sister. She was planning to buy him shoes online, unaware she was walking into the killer's trap. She arrived at the meeting point, and the perpetrator made an excuse to lure her into his car. Yoo Kyung, wary of the crowded street, reluctantly got in. As soon as she did, he locked the doors. Sensing danger, Na Young quietly called Hyun-jun, but he was on another call. He called back as soon as he was finished. Yoo Kyung's phone rang, but she didn't dare answer, which only excited the perpetrator. Unexpectedly, Na Young's voice came through the phone. "Hello, it's Na Young. You didn't answer earlier." "Hello? Hello?" Yoo Kyung remained silent. The police suspected this case was connected to the previous ones due to similarities in the victims' ages, the perpetrator's appearance, and the timing around holidays. Hyun-jun tracked Na Young's movements and saw her arrive at the car, then disappear from view. But Hyun-jun remembered that 10 minutes prior, his sister had sent him a voice message. "Oppa, I have something to tell you." Unable to reach him, she had stopped at a street vendor's cart across the street. Hyun-jun questioned the vendor, who confirmed that Na Young had gotten into a silver car, but couldn't recall the license plate. Fortunately, Hyun-jun noticed a nearby traffic camera, which helped them identify the vehicle. A female officer, pretending to be a new driver, staged a minor accident with the car to lure the perpetrator to a parking lot where they could apprehend him. However, he refused to reveal Na Young's location. They found an encrypted computer at the perpetrator's home. Decrypting it could lead them to Na Young, but the computer had a self-destruct mechanism. 5 incorrect password attempts would wipe the memory. Captain Kang noticed something else. There were signs of struggle on the previous victims' bodies, but Yi Min, the perpetrator, had no injuries. The autopsy revealed the killer had used tape to cover the victim's eyes. This time, such a meticulous and obsessive individual had dumped the body in a public place. If the perpetrator didn't have multiple personalities, it meant Yi Min had an accomplice, the mastermind. While intelligent, Yi Min had a submissive personality. Therefore, the accomplice pretended to protect Yi Min, but actually treated him as a pawn, exploiting his insecurities around women. The police quickly discovered Yi Min had spent 3 years in juvenile detention for theft. Children in juvenile detention often seek protection, so they were sure to find clues about the accomplice there. Officer Sang-chul was skeptical, as Yi Min had no friends at the time. Then, an officer had a thought. What about someone who used to be Yi Min's friend? Who was this person? A friend from juvenile detention named Han Ti. Coincidentally, they found Han Ti's business card while searching Hyun-jun's car. Han Ti had been in and out of juvenile detention since he was 15 and currently worked at an auto repair shop. However, the killer was one step ahead. When the police arrived at the auto repair shop, Han Ti had been murdered. But before his death, he showed signs of fear, yet had no defensive wounds, suggesting he was killed off guard. The killer had stabbed Han Ti in the mouth, seemingly as punishment for informing and as a warning. The victim's last call was to the police. He had also packed his bags and passport, as if preparing to escape someone's control. Captain Kang suspected something had happened in juvenile detention all those years ago. Yi Min and Han Ti were being manipulated into harming women. The real perpetrator had silenced Han Ti. Something definitely happened between the 3 of them. According to a juvenile detention officer, Yi Min was constantly bullied by Han Ti and his gang. He had even attempted suicide to escape the torment. With his past trauma exposed, Yi Min recounted what happened. In their room, after being beaten unconscious, he would be held down on a table. Then, one of the bullies would sexually assault him, until someone appeared, someone who became his savior. "Want me to take care of one of them? What can you give me in return?" "Anything. Then we'll always be together. Choose one. Choose." Yi Min pointed to his attacker, and the newcomer dealt with him as promised. Han Ti, lucky to survive, became subservient to this person, helping him carry out his murderous plans. He didn't mention the person's name, but the only one who could resolve their conflicts and exert control over them was a correctional officer. However, the police investigated all the officers at the juvenile detention center from that year and found no suspects. Then, Hyun-jun realized the only others who could freely enter and exit the facility and held authority comparable to officers were the supervisors. Suddenly, a female officer recalled someone connected to both Yi-min and Han-tae who also suffered from obsessive-compulsive disorder, Sang-chul, the supervisor she had questioned earlier. To avoid tipping him off, they decided to wait outside Sang-chul's house and observed him leaving in the middle of the night. After tailing him for a while, Hyun-jun realized Sang-chul seemed to be deliberately taking a circuitous route, so they forced him to stop. They then realized they'd fallen for a diversionary tactic. Sang-chul was eager to deal with his captive. Fortunately, the tech team decrypted Yi-min's computer and discovered he was monitoring the victim via live video feed. Officer Lee Han astutely observed a light bulb swinging in the cage with a consistent rhythm and periodic shaking. They deduced Na-young was being held on a boat, and the only location with a clear line of sight for a live video feed was the Han River. However, with over 600 boats docked on the river, finding her was like searching for a needle in a haystack. With less than an hour left, Captain Kang knew they had to pressure Yi-min for information. He ordered the temperature in the interrogation room lowered, knowing that a drop in body temperature slows brain function. Then, he had a box filled with blank papers labeled with Sang-chul's name brought in, creating the illusion that they had evidence against him and that Sang-chul was already in custody. Seeing Yi-min's anxiety rise, Captain Kang probed, "Was it your idea to imprison women on a boat? He's pinning everything on you, yet you're still here protecting him." Hearing this, Yi-min reacted strongly, convinced Sang-chul wasn't capable of such acts. As Yi-min neared his breaking point, Captain Kang pressed on his vulnerability. "Sang-chul exploited your sincerity, used you even more than Han-tae. He's nothing but a bloodthirsty monster." "Stop it, just stop." Captain Kang produced a photo of Yi-min's family, attempting to awaken his conscience. Seizing the opportunity, Captain Kang showed him a picture of Na-young and asked about her whereabouts. But by the time Hyun-jun arrived at the location, Sang-chul had moved Na-young. He had chained her by the neck and dragged her deep into the woods. Based on Captain Kang's profile of Sang-chul, he was the type to sacrifice his own life to complete his twisted plan. Even with only 10 minutes left, he would wait for the perfect moment to strike. Someone discovered an abandoned juvenile detention center nearby that Sang-chul frequently visited on weekends. Years ago, there had been a fire at the facility that coincided with Sang-chul's departure from his job there. Captain Kang believed this was where Sang-chul would kill Na-young. Just as Sang-chul was about to act, they arrived, creating a distraction. Captain Kang deliberately provoked him. "You've never had a girlfriend, have you? You wouldn't even dare talk to a woman without resorting to violence, would you?" It turned out that years ago, after being rejected by a girl, Sang-chul believed everyone was mocking him, and he set fire to the juvenile detention center. Realizing his impotence, his psyche became warped. He began abducting and killing women because it was the only way he could feel powerful. Enraged, Sang-chul was about to fire when Captain Kang, with lightning-fast reflexes, overpowered him and rescued Na-young. The serial murder case in the Southwest had just concluded when the 7-year-old unsolved Belly Ripper case resurfaced. Korea, a small country, seemed to harbor a disproportionate number of deviants. In 2000, a horrific string of murders had terrorized the nation. The killer carried out 12 brutal attacks, claiming 21 victims regardless of age or gender. His modus operandi was chillingly consistent. He would first attack the male, incapacitating him, then force him to watch as he brutally murdered the accompanying female. He would then take a trophy from the bodies, leaving it for his next victims. He even taunted the police with an audio recording of one of his crimes. "I dealt with 2 people. I used a knife. No matter how many times I do this, it's tiring. Maybe if I keep doing it, I'll get used to killing people." Then, abruptly, the killings stopped. 10 years later, on his deathbed, the former police chief revealed a long-held secret to Captain Kang. If you stop investigating me, as long as I live, I will cease my hunt. If you dare to continue, your family will be next. It turned out he had made a deal with the killer, disbanding the investigation team in exchange for his family's safety. Now, with the former chief nearing death, they knew the killer would resume his spree, targeting Captain Kang and the new special investigation team. That very night, the killer struck, choosing a young couple as his prey. While the man was outside on his phone, the killer plunged a knife into his abdomen, severed his Achilles tendon, and tied him to the driver's seat. He then drew a gleaming knife and murdered the young woman right before the man's eyes, reveling in his agony. The bodies were discovered the next day. The special investigation team was horrified to find the killer's signature mark the eyeglasses of a previous victim left on the scene. The glasses belonged to Yang Chial, the sole survivor of the Belly Ripper attacks 7 years prior. Yang Chial had been stabbed dozens of times but miraculously survived. The team surmised the killer left Yang Chial's glasses as a way of making amends for his previous failure and as a message to them, a message they had to decipher before he struck again. But as the killer vanished, so did Yang Chial. Fortunately, a book analyzing the Belly Ripper case, detailing the attacks, was circulating. The team suspected the journalist who wrote the book had a connection to Yang Chial. Tracking the journalist's recent activity, they discovered he frequently called a specific public payphone. Captain Kang tried calling the journalist's number from the payphone. "Hello, is this Yang Chial? It's Kai Hyung." Finally, through the journalist, they located Yang Chial. Upon seeing the glasses, he was gripped by terror. "He's back? He's a demon." He recounted the night of his attack. He had been about to propose to his girlfriend, Yu, when the killer knocked on his car window. He was stabbed over 30 times. Though he survived, he was forced to watch as the killer murdered Yu, her hand clutched tightly in his. It was agonizing. I tried to pry her fingers open, but I couldn't. Since then, he had relied on peppermint candies to soothe his anxiety, living in fear while the killer roamed free, unprotected by the very police force meant to keep him safe. The police were forced to revisit the old case files, desperately searching for new leads. Just then, the killer called Captain Kang directly. "Are you going to stick to your convictions? Is that how you want to be recognized? You're just a murderer yourself, killing people because you can't accept your own insecurities. So, you're refusing my deal. You have no new ideas. What surprises can you possibly offer me? I won't disappoint you." Preparing his own surprise for Captain Kang, the killer targeted a family of 4 on a camping trip. The screams of the older couple shattered the night's stillness. A young boy, covering his younger sister's mouth, hid behind a tree, but the killer had already spotted them. As the boy frantically called for help, his voice trembled. "Hello, can you hear me? Hello, someone's dead here." This time, the killer placed the watch of his previous victim on the dead woman's ankle. He deliberately released the 2 children who witnessed the crime, giving them a photograph to deliver to the police. When Hyun-jun saw the photo, he froze. It depicted Captain Kang's wife and child. The killer's taunting call followed. "I assume you received my gift. So, what do you think? Ready to make a deal now? Why aren't you saying anything? Where's all your bravado now? Don't involve the children. Just wait, things are about to get much more interesting." The special investigation team immediately locked down the exits and reviewed the mall's security footage. They saw the killer leading the children out of the mall through a second-floor exit 25 minutes earlier. Hyun-jun gave chase, relieved to find the boy safe. Shaken, Captain Kang arranged for another agent to escort his wife and child to a secure location. Based on the children's descriptions, a profile of the perpetrator was created. The task force narrowed down their suspect list to 3 individuals matching the criteria, one of whom, Jin H-won, had emigrated 3 years prior. The second had an alibi for the time of the camping ground murders. The whereabouts of CO Jin H-won remained unknown. But the killer didn't give the police any respite. That night, disguised as a traffic officer, he stopped a car and claimed another couple. The crime scene was even more brutal. This time, the killer left a necklace and took a ring. The police suspected Jin H-won, as the crime scene was near his home. Raiding his house, they found a picture of the grandmother and grandson among photos of other victims plastered on his wall, seemingly confirming their suspicions. They also found a photo of Yang Qiao, leading them to believe the killer was still fixated on him. They set up surveillance near Yang Qiao's home, and sure enough, Jin Hwan appeared. He spotted the police and fled, but was apprehended after a chase. The killer who had terrorized Korea was finally caught. But Yang Qiao, instead of relief, expressed unease. Is he really the killer? For now, he is. All the evidence points to him with 90% certainty. But what about the remaining 10%? What if it's hiding the truth? A USB drive found in Jin Hwan's house revealed numerous photos of the victims. Before interrogation even began, Jin Hwan confessed, detailing his crimes. However, Kai Hyung noticed inconsistencies. He immediately asserted that Jin Hwan wasn't the killer. His account of the third murder didn't match the facts. The killer hadn't started using public phones to contact the police until after the fourth murder. Furthermore, his colleagues observed Jin Hwan's behavior, head bowed, biting his lip, and constantly scratching the back of his hand, signs of extreme anxiety and stress, as if under duress. Recalling the killer's threats against his family, Hyun-jun focused on the photo in Jin Hwan's computer. He suspected Jin Hwan's family was being held hostage, pawns in the real killer's game. Jin Hwan's whispered confession confirmed his fears. My family, they're in his hands. At that very moment, the police department's network was under attack by a hacker. The source of the attack was traced back to Jin Hwan and the USB drive found in his home. This proved that the killer had been systematically leading the police into a trap. Suddenly, Hyun-jun remembered a previously overlooked detail. The child witness had mentioned the killer smelled of peppermint. Captain Kai Hyung connected the dots. After that day, Yang Cheol learned that Yoon Jin's hand had been tightly clenched. At that time, Yang Cheol had been stabbed dozens of times by the killer. So, could the truth be entirely different? The truth gradually surfaced, revealing Yang Cheol as the murderer responsible for dozens of lives. He had been pretending to be a survivor. While the task force was still reeling from the shock, a video was unexpectedly decrypted from the USB drive. Boo, did I scare you? Isn't this more exciting now? See these two people here? Are you going to come running to save them? Kai Hyung was instantly gripped by panic. Without a second thought, he decided to go and save his children. His colleagues discovered that the video was pre-recorded. The victims had already been brutally murdered. The killer's intention was to make Kai Hyung lose both his family and his faith. Kai Hyung's anxiety intensified when images of the agents assigned to protect his family appeared on the USB. He immediately sensed something was wrong and tried calling the agents, but none of them answered. As he feared, something terrible had happened. When the task force arrived at the safe house, they found the agents critically injured and dying. From their accounts, the task force learned the killer had impersonated a police officer. He had used an agent's phone to call Kai Hyung's wife, falsely claiming that not only had her security detail been killed, but Kai Hyung had also perished. Upon hearing this, Kai Hyung's wife collapsed, unable to think clearly. Ultimately, she followed the killer's instructions. She discarded her phone to avoid being tracked and took her child to a pre-arranged location. While Kai Hyung frantically searched for his wife and child, he received a call from the killer. Do you understand what true pain is now? You've never truly lived, the people you love, your home, their happy laughter. So I want to take all of that away from you. The killer lured his wife back home and held her hostage. He forced Kai Hyung to face a final showdown. Honey, I really wanted to see you one last time, but I guess I can't. I'm sorry. When Kai Hyung rushed home, he found his wife lying in a pool of blood. Suddenly, he saw a pair of feet protruding from behind the curtains and fired several shots. But all the bullets hit a bulletproof vest. The two men engaged in a fierce struggle. In this moment, all his pain and rage transformed into strength. He wanted nothing more than to kill the murderer with his own hands. Die, die, die. A captain controlled by those who don't deserve to live would lose his reason for living. Kai Hyung regained his composure, suddenly remembering his son. Fortunately, the killer hadn't found the boy. But his wife's tragic death became a lifelong wound. However, the irony was that just 15 days after his arrest, the killer feigned a seizure and successfully escaped during a hospital transfer. He once again became a nightmare, plunging the South Korean public into terror. At the same time, a series of murders targeting beautiful women began. These women, dressed seductively, went to provide services, unaware that their drinks had been laced with a powerful sedative. After the women consumed the drugged drinks and passed out, the following morning, a real estate agent showing a model apartment discovered a body inside a kitchen cabinet. Everyone present was horrified and screamed. Confronted with the bloody scene, the police, alerted by a report, arrived at the model apartment to investigate. They discovered the killer had used kitchen knives from the model apartment to cook and had also been drinking. He'd even casually watched TV and taken a bath after the murder. Strangely, the perpetrator had bludgeoned the victim to death with a blunt object right there in the apartment. The scene showed significant blood spatter, yet the floor was oddly clean, devoid of any trace. If the killer could calmly deal with the aftermath and enjoy a bath, it suggested he wasn't worried about leaving evidence. If he was so confident, why bother cleaning up the blood? Hyun-jun speculated that the perpetrator's actions weren't about destroying evidence, but simply tidying up. Clearly, he treated the model apartment as his own home. This was the third similar case recently. All occurred in model apartments with fixed layouts, and the method was always bludgeoning with a blunt object. The task force suspected the same killer was responsible. However, besides construction workers and real estate agents, potential buyers and promotional staff also had free access to the model apartments. Identifying the suspect wouldn't be easy. Meanwhile, the killer accelerated his pace. This time, he chose his target through a dating app. As he requested, the woman, dressed in business attire and wearing glasses, arrived at the designated location. Upon arrival, she found the entire floor deserted. The man couldn't hide his excitement. He invited her to his place, but she seemed to sense something amiss. "Can we go to a hotel nearby? Why come to a place like this instead of going home? I'll pay for the hotel." The enticing offer proved too tempting to refuse, and she unknowingly walked into a trap. The place was empty, not at all like someone lived there. The cold, gloomy atmosphere frightened her. The man deliberately prepared a candlelit dinner, putting her at ease enough to sit down. He even romantically scattered flower petals in the bathtub. But the more she thought about it, the more something felt wrong. She feigned a headache and said she needed to go downstairs to buy medicine. But he had no intention of letting her leave. He brutally smashed her head with a wrench, turning her into a lamb awaiting slaughter. The man planned to repeat his old trick, enjoying a candlelit dinner with this woman in the beautiful model apartment. Unexpectedly, the sound of the door opening interrupted him. It was a young man posting advertisements for the model apartment. During a brief struggle, he saw the woman slumped in the corner but said nothing. Instead, he cleverly slipped away and called the police. But the criminal followed him and brutally attacked him with the wrench. When the police arrived to examine the model apartment, they recognized the work of the same perpetrator. The victim's phone had an 18+ app installed, confirming the task force's earlier suspicions. The previous 3 victims had low incomes but extravagant spending habits. Min Young discovered they had all registered and used the same app. Clearly, the killer used this method to select his targets. They noticed the water and electricity in the apartment had been used for about 15 days, indicating the killer had no fixed abode and was merely squatting in these model homes. At this point, Min Young discovered a similar assault had occurred a week before the current case. The perpetrator had lured the victim to a location under the guise of providing a service. Upon arriving, the woman found herself at a newly constructed building, devoid of residents. Before she could grasp the situation, a masked man dragged her inside. She realized it wasn't his home. As she tried to leave, he suddenly unleashed a flurry of punches. The woman fell to her knees, pleading, "Please don't hurt me. I have young children, and I'm the only one who takes care of them. They'll starve without me. Please, I beg you." Fortunately, her son called at that moment, causing the man to hesitate. The woman seized this brief opportunity, got up, and ran. She flagged down a car on the street and cried for help. The attacker abandoned his assault and fled the scene. Based on the survivor's description, he wore a shabby coat, his shoes were caked with mud, his speech was slurred, and he reeked of alcohol. He also carried a strange object, described as a plumb bob with a long, pointed tip, like a bullet, seemingly attached to a chain. Based on this description, Lee Han sketched the object. They identified it as a plumb bob used to check the vertical alignment of structures, commonly found on construction sites. The police immediately began to develop a psychological profile of the perpetrator. Given the model apartment's representation of a perfect home, his frequent visits suggested he fantasized about the space as his own ideal dwelling. Within this fantasy, he envisioned himself with his preferred type of woman. When this illusion shattered, he became agitated and lashed out. It was likely the type of woman he targeted was connected to the source of his psychological distortion, possibly a parent or lover. He viewed the model apartment as his sanctuary and couldn't bear to see it defiled. Combining the survivor's account and the method of attack, the perpetrator likely worked at a construction site or was involved in the model apartment's construction. The perpetrator's alcohol use was also noteworthy. He might have relied on alcohol to intensify his fantasies. If so, his impulsive behavior would become increasingly difficult to control, making it crucial to apprehend him quickly. Fortunately, the police found a suspect matching the survivor's description in surveillance footage from a store across from the fourth crime scene. Backtracking his movements, they discovered his last known location near an elevated road construction site. Hyun-jun went there to investigate and spotted a homeless man frantically trying to leave. Recognizing him, Hyun-jun apprehended the man and discovered the victim's clothes and a hammer in his backpack. The man claimed he had found the items. Upon learning they belonged to the victim, he feigned surprise and hastily admitted to stealing them from someone named Kang. He insisted he was at a homeless shelter during the time of the incident, corroborated by other homeless individuals. Clearly, he wasn't the perpetrator. He knew nothing else about this Kang. The police released the suspect's description to the public. A construction site provided a lead, a man named Kang Taek-soo. A few months prior, he had worked for an interior decorating company. His supervisor described him as peculiar. After completing a house, he would leave a plumb bob mark and sometimes stay overnight, as if it were his own home. However, the identity he registered with was fake. As the investigation stalled, Kang Dong-jun, claiming to be the suspect's brother, arrived at the police station, stating, "I think the suspect you're looking for is my younger brother." According to the older brother's account, their family moved frequently during his childhood. Their father was an architect but never owned their own home. Unable to bear the strain, their mother stole the rent money and abandoned them. Ultimately, their father, unable to cope with the shock, took his own life. Although the two brothers survived, their family was shattered in an instant, leaving the younger brother, Kang Dong-min, with a deep-seated obsession with houses. The police sent photos to surviving victims for identification, confirming Dong-min as the perpetrator. Dong-jun revealed that his brother had been wandering around a specific area, prompting the police to search there. The homeless people in the area said they hadn't seen Dong-min for a week. However, Hyun-jun noticed plumb bob markings on a nearby wall, the perpetrator's signature left at places where he'd spent the night. Following these markings might lead them to Dong-min. Unexpectedly, when the police arrived at the targeted warehouse, an explosion occurred, resulting in the death of Dong-min. Based on a leftover alcohol bottle and gas canister, the police initially suspected an accidental explosion. However, Hyun-jun discovered evidence of intentionally spilled gasoline. At the same time, his colleague found a crucial clue. Surveillance footage from a nearby underpass showed Dong-min in an altercation with a homeless person, resulting in Dong-min being stabbed and injured. The suspect's image captured by a dashcam just before the warehouse explosion didn't match the appearance of someone with a stab wound. In retrospect, the timing was suspicious. The explosion occurred almost immediately after the police located Dong-min. Kai Hyang suspected someone was manipulating the situation, which brought to mind the older brother's suspicious behavior. At the time, Dong-jun had bloodshot eyes, dry cracked lips, constantly drank water, and kept wiping his sweaty palms. These were classic signs of drug poisoning. However, drugs weren't used in the first crime. But starting with the second crime, the alcohol glasses found at the scenes all tested positive for hallucinogens. The perpetrator had been committing the crimes under the influence of these drugs. Kai Hyang theorized that Dong-min committed the first crime. After being stabbed and unable to continue, Dong-jun, knowing his brother was guilty, impersonated him and continued the attacks. When the police publicly investigated Dong-min as the suspect, Dong-jun felt he could no longer maintain the charade. So, he proactively went to the police station, intentionally leading them to Dong-min's location. Then, he waited for the opportunity to set the fire, silencing his brother and framing him for all the crimes. The two brothers grew up in the same environment and shared similar psychological traumas, giving Dong-jun ample motive. Sure enough, after investigating Dong-jun, the police discovered he was going through a divorce, including a dispute over asset division. Furthermore, he was deeply in debt, having even mortgaged his house. Kai Hyang didn't immediately expose him, but instead subtly revealed that the police suspected arson, implying Dong-min might have had an accomplice. Upon hearing this, Dong-jun became extremely anxious, falling right into Kai Hyang's trap. That night, he rushed home and pulled a blood-soaked notebook from his bag. It was Dong-min's murder diary. As he was about to destroy the evidence, the police stormed in and caught him red-handed. The first murder was committed by Dong-min, but the subsequent ones were carried out by Dong-jun, right? You've been impersonating Dong-min to commit these crimes, haven't you? In that backpack, the police also found Dong-min's clothes with traces of the victim's blood. Faced with such clear evidence, the perpetrator had no choice but to confess the truth. It turned out that while drowning in debt, he learned that his mother had left him a piece of inherited land upon her death. To handle this land, Dong-min's consent was required. So, he began searching everywhere for Dong-min. When he finally found him, Dong-min was severely injured and confessed to his own criminal acts. Dong-jun also discovered Dong-min's murder diary, which clearly detailed his plans to harm people. To experience this feeling, Dong-jun impersonated Dong-min to continue the killings. What happened next was exactly as the police suspected. Ultimately, what awaits him is the judgment of the law. With this, the serial murders at the model homes were solved. Next, the task force would face the insane killer Yang Cheol. On the Phantom Club website, every time a murder novel was published, a real-life case occurred with identical details. The victim in the first case had severe burns all over their body and their fingernails were pulled out. Then the body was dumped in the wilderness. After the murder, the perpetrator sent a video of the victim's torture to their family. Based on the method of killing and body disposal, this case was identical to the previous series of torture murders. In the second case, the victim was found covered in blood, slumped inside a car. The method was identical to the recently solved series of highway shootings. The victim wore a ring on their wrist, a trophy the perpetrator took from the first victim. This was Yang Cheol's signature. Every time he killed, he took an item from the victim and left it on the next victim. Since 2000, he has committed 15 brutal crimes, taking the lives of 28 people, regardless of age or gender. Among them was the wife of task force leader Kai Hyang. Just 15 days after his arrest, he successfully escaped prison and once again became a nightmare that terrified the people of South Korea. This is the final case in the famous Korean drama Criminal Minds. That night, a girl happened upon a stranger struggling to walk and kindly offered assistance. However, she unknowingly fell into his trap. The next day, the girl's body was found near a demolished building. The investigation revealed it was the place where the girl was born. The perpetrator also sent a video of the victim's torture to her mother. Based on the method and the choice of body disposal location, this case was identical to the previous series of torture murders. What caught the task force's attention was Yang Jin, the first person to discover the body. He found Kai Hyang's business card and a signed book on the body. indicating that the girl had attended the task force's criminal psychology lecture. The book, titled The Origin of Evil, was written by journalist Sun, based on interviews with Yang Cheol. When the police went to the journalist's home to inquire, they discovered they had mysteriously lost contact with him. Shortly afterward, another incident occurred. A female driver was shot in the head with a pistol while driving. Based on the victim's age, gender, the murder weapon, and the location on a deserted road, this crime, mirroring previous cases handled by the Special Task Force, clearly indicated the perpetrator was intentionally targeting them. They sent the book, The Origin of Evil, written by the journalist Sun, for analysis and discovered it was co-authored. The tech team also found a hidden link on the official website redirecting to a dark web forum frequented by Yang Cheol's followers. However, a password was required for access. Through analysis, they traced the website's IP address to a specific page and line in the book. Linking the corresponding letters from that passage formed the word ring, which was the symbolic object Yang Cheol had recently left behind. Entering it as the password successfully granted access to the website. To the task force's shock, the details of 2 recent murders matched the content on the website. Furthermore, the website's update timestamps predated the actual crimes. This meant someone was using the platform to foreshadow murders, and these 2 instances suggested the copycat had a connection to Yang Cheol. The administrator's IP address was registered on an anonymous server, making it impossible to trace. As the task force hit a dead end, the website updated with a 3rd fictional murder story, describing a murder in a church. Sure enough, a similar incident occurred in reality. The killer attempted to stab an elderly man in a church but failed. The man escaped and hid under a bridge where he encountered another man and pleaded for help. Unexpectedly, this man was an accomplice. The elderly man was brutally murdered with a single slash to the throat. The killer covered the victim's eyes with a black cloth before leaving the scene. The method and details matched a previous serial murder case solved by the task force. At the scene, they found glasses belonging to the journalist, Sun. Simultaneously, the tech team investigating the website found the letters TGP repeatedly appearing in the novel's comments section. Investigation revealed TGP was the abbreviation for a newspaper called The Mysterious World, whose target audience was university students majoring in criminal psychology. The task force went to the newspaper's office to investigate. They discovered an anonymous person had preemptively announced the time and location of the crimes through an advertisement in the paper. This led Kai Hyung to suspect the copycat was among the audience at that day's presentation. He immediately requested security footage from the event and compared it with footage from around the crime scenes, looking for individuals with similar appearances and clothing. 3 suspects were identified, all members of the university's deduction club. Just then, Kai Hyung received a call from Yang Cheol. "So, how do you like my gift? Do you like surprises? Just wait, things are about to get even more interesting." True to his word, Yang Cheol targeted another young woman. The website's novel now depicted the abduction and murder of a girl through a used goods website, implying the copycat's next crime would mirror a previous serial murder case in the Southwest region. Based on the meeting location described in the novel, the task force quickly identified 3 potential locations and set up ambushes. Meanwhile, while investigating the victim's information, the Special Task Force discovered that the deceased ran a deduction website abbreviated with the letter H on his ring. One of the 3 suspects, Kang H. Wang, had a previous romantic relationship with the victim. Hidden social activities came to light, and the victim had begun to suspect H. Wang was the criminal mastermind. Therefore, the victim was silenced. Kai Hyung suddenly recognized H. Wang as the student who had given him a hard time at the seminar. The killer had already escaped once. According to him, figuring out the killer's mindset was like seeing 2 sides of the same coin. So why hadn't he been caught yet? He could definitely be caught, and he would be caught. This man, discharged from the military for causing trouble, was now the administrator of a website specializing in harmful fiction. As predicted, suspect H. Wang appeared at the scene. The task force surrounded and apprehended him, successfully rescuing the hostage. When faced with police interrogation, Kai Hon remained incredibly calm. He knew the police lacked direct evidence to prove his guilt, so he vehemently denied all charges. Furthermore, he had a thorough understanding of criminal psychology, rendering Kai Hyung's interrogation methods completely ineffective. This kind of lighting and the temperature have already dropped. He even deliberately showed me a picture of the victim, and then remained silent, putting psychological pressure on me. Is there anything else I don't know? If so, could you lower the temperature a bit more? Ultimately, due to lack of evidence, he was declared innocent and released. At this very moment, the chief, who had always supported the task force's work, announced that the copycat murder case would be handed over to the large-scale search team. This didn't sit right with Kai Hyung because the killer Yang Cheol's target was the task force. Moreover, they were the ones who understood the case best, but the chief was determined to carry out orders from higher up. Then, the chief received a call and hurriedly left. Kai Hyung sensed something was amiss and instructed the tech team to track his location. At this time, a new prediction appeared on the website, but its content was completely different from before. It didn't describe the environment or method of the crime, but simply stated that the next crime would occur one afternoon, and the target was the hostage the task force had previously rescued. The tech team pinpointed the chief's whereabouts. He was on his way to the hospital where the hostage was being treated. It turned out Yang Cheol had kidnapped the chief's daughter and forced him to kill the hostage, Nak Kung. But his true target was the chief. When the task force arrived, they unknowingly passed by Yang Cheol disguised as a medical staff member, and the hostage had already been eliminated after he successfully kidnapped the chief. Yang Cheol left a message on the website, a challenge to meet the task force. He then sent them a surprise gift. Hyun-jun cautiously opened the bag and froze in horror. Inside was the head of reporter Sun Yongchen. His audacity stemmed from having kidnapped 5 more children of high-ranking officials. He held them captive in a sealed room, continuously releasing a pungent, irritating smoke. There was only one oxygen mask, forcing them to kill each other for survival. Despite a large police force surrounding the cafe for the safety of the hostages' children of high-ranking officials, they couldn't act aggressively. Yang Cheol demanded to negotiate with Kai Hyung, requesting a car and driver for his escape. Any reckless action would result in nothing but retrieving the children's bodies. Once they reached a safe location, Yang Cheol revealed the warehouse where the hostages were held, but withheld the chief's location. With time running out, Kai Hyung was forced to let Yang Cheol go. Arriving at the warehouse, Kai Hyung found the hostages exhausted and having fought amongst themselves. The smoke Yang Cheol had released was harmless. Their fear stemmed from their own inherent savagery. Meanwhile, the chief regained consciousness and heard his daughter's cries. He struggled free, rescued her, and while escaping, encountered Yang Cheol who had returned. The chief risked his life protecting his daughter, and they fled. The task force re-examined the entire case based on evidence from the church murder scene. They concluded an accomplice had aided H. Wang in the serial killings, and the copycat murders were a game to outsmart them. Yang Cheol used murder novels to forecast the timing of the crimes, with his followers carrying them out as chapters were updated online. The time of body discovery was crucial. Furthermore, the copycat perfectly replicated details never released to the public, indicating access to inside police information. This led Kai Hyung to suspect Officer Choi, the first to discover the initial body. "I'm Choi Y-jin, from the Juvenile Investigation Unit." This was his introduction at the first crime scene, where he also discovered a dropped item. Kai Hyung's investigation revealed Y-jin was the fiancé of Yang Cheol's 7th victim. Kai Hyung suspected Y-jin sought revenge, posing as a follower. He waited at predicted locations for each online update, hoping to encounter and confront Yang Cheol. However, he only ever encountered H. Wang. Then, Yang Cheol sent a video of the chief, threatening Kai Hyung and demanding an end to the pursuit in exchange for his disappearance. Never one to compromise, Kai Hyung used Y-jin as bait. When the website updated with a new chapter, Hyun-jun, disguised as Yang Cheol, appeared at the predicted location. Y-jin, lying in wait, sprang into action, only to be caught in the task force's trap. He confessed to being H1's accomplice but wasn't the task force's true target. Kai Hyung anticipated Yang Cheol observing from nearby, as he had before. Like a mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, the task force discreetly followed Yang Cheol's car to a mental hospital, the source of his pain. Suspecting Yang Cheol deliberately led them there, Kai Hyung believed this location signified his desire to end everything. The chief was in grave danger, so Kai Hyung and Hyun Jun, covering each other, advanced deeper into the building. Yang Cheol monitored their every move through surveillance. When they reached the target room, they found a still steaming cup of coffee, suggesting Yang Cheol had just left. Kai Hyung noticed the surveillance monitor showing the chief locked in a room. Just then, a pained struggle echoed from the corner of the room. Hyun Jun instinctively thought it was the chief, but Kai Hyung immediately warned him back. Kim Hyun Jun, get back. Kim Yang Cheol, stop playing games. Sure enough, the shadowy figure was Yang Cheol disguised as the chief. Concerned for the chief's safety, neither dared to act rashly. Yang Cheol voluntarily removed his magazine and challenged them to one last game. He slammed the door shut and tossed a backpack towards Hyun Jun. Inside was a single gas mask. Yang Cheol then put on the mask and quickly pressed a remote, releasing poisonous gas. He wanted to see how Kai Hyung and Hyun Jun would face this life-or-death situation. However, he witnessed Kai Hyung and Hyun Jun saving each other. When Yang Cheol tried to seize the opportunity to assassinate Hyun Jun, Kai Hyung lunged at him, grappling with him. During the struggle, Hyun Jun picked up a gun from the floor, while Yang Cheol took Kai Hyung hostage. At this moment, Yang Cheol revealed that he had killed the chief long ago. And of all the crimes he had committed, killing Kai Hyung's wife brought him the most satisfaction. These words sent Kai Hyung into a furious rage. A series of gunshots rang out, ending it all. Kai Hyung emerged from the shadows, his face grim. The murderer who had terrorized all of South Korea had paid for his crimes. And the Korean drama Mino Mins concluded there. That's all for today's story. Thank you for watching. What did you think of this drama? Let us know in the comments below.